Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Stevenson, and welcome to another episode of From the Wheelhouse. Tonight, we're so pleased to have a very special guest, Rebecca Hancock. She's a deck officer, and she's going to tell you how she did the impossible. She is also the Grand President of the International Shipmasters Association. Now, what is that, you're probably saying? You're about to find out, and I want you to give a warm welcome to our good friend, Rebecca Hancock. Welcome.
Hello, Mark. How are you tonight?
I couldn't be better. I'm so excited that you're here in Chicago. You're here for the International Shipmasters Industry Day week. Is that right?
That is correct.
Wow. And it's amazing that year after year we have Industry Day, but very, very seldom do we see the Grand President. Now, the Chicago Lodge is only comprised of captains that drive boats around Chicago. But you're the Grand President. What does that mean?
Well, basically, the International Shipmasters Association is a fraternal organization that has 23 member lodges, and those individual local lodges are scattered around the Great Lakes in both the U.S. and Canada. And the fact that we have member lodges in Canada is what means and the reason for why we call it the International Shipmasters Association. So don't get the wrong idea here and think that we have lodges all across the world. It is just in the Great Lakes region. And I became involved with the organization in 2005 when one of the members called up and asked me to help out with the last convention that we had in Traverse City. And from that point on, I continued to go to the conventions as a delegate, in fact. And if you out there are wondering what a delegate does, basically each of the 23 member lodges, when the Grand Lodge convenes annually, will be at the convention and help to not only pass on information that they learn at the Grand Lodge meeting to their local lodges, but also to be able to give their opinion on different proposals and other pieces of information that might pass during those meetings. And so when the Grand Lodge convenes on an annual basis, they elect officers of that lodge. Now, each individual local lodge also has its own officers. And so what Mark was referring to and alluding to just a moment ago is that this year I was installed as the Grand President of the entire organization. So it was a pretty big honor.
You were not just installed, you were elected. And here's the amazing part about it. First of all, you're a woman. And how is it that...
How did you notice that? I thought I was going to hide it, but it has escaped.
But this organization was formed in 1886.
A long time ago.
And all of these years, it's only been, well, it's being a captain or working in the maritime industry on boats, it's always been a male-dominated profession. But how is it that they turn around and select you as a woman to be the leader of the International Shipmasters? That's the first thing. Then there's a second thing, and we'll get to it later. The second thing is that you're not a captain. You're a deck officer about to become a captain. So that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes to the fact that the leaders who are captains already look to you with that much respect. They look to you with that much respect to know that you can lead an organization of this magnitude. Those two things are just historic, and I have to applaud you on that. Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me this: where did you get started in the business? I mean, you didn't just become a deck officer overnight.
No.
What inspired you to work on the water?
Well, a series of silly mistakes. Just kidding. What actually happened was I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is on the Hudson River. And while I was pursuing my bachelor's degree at College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor, Maine, a little tiny school, about 250 students, it's actually a liberal arts degree, Bachelor of Arts in Human Ecology, which that is a completely different subject, which we won't cover at this point. But after I had received my degree there, during the time I was studying, I did an internship which was on the Clearwater sloop. And it is possible that even all the way here in Chicago that some of you may be familiar with the type of work that the Clearwater does. It was the brainchild of Pete Seeger back in, I think, about 1969, and he had been reading about the cargo carrying sloops. This was before the age of motor-powered ships. A sloop is basically any sailboat that only has one main mast. So anything that you see that has two or more masts would, of course, be a schooner. So the Clearwater, after it was built, and as Pete Seeger was kind of thinking about what he would do with this giant sailboat that he had, for sailboats, as they're concerned, it is pretty large. It's, I believe, 106 feet long.
That is awful large.
Yes, it is pretty big.
Sure.
When they do a Hudson River jibe, everybody ducks because you don't want to get hit with that
jibe is when the sail, ladies and gentlemen, swings from one side to the other. Now, I have a 32-footer, and that thing is dangerous enough. I couldn't imagine a 100 plus.
Yeah, it is quite the thing, because you have the force of not only the boom, which is on the bottom of the sail, but also the gaff. And so you have a gaff. You have either a gaff rigged or a Marconi rigged sailboat.
Now,
you must know all about this, being a sailor.
Yeah, but see, our viewers don't. You're talking way above their head, and they don't know what these parts of the boats are. But if you just describe it as the pole that holds up the sail, and the pole that holds it straight on the bottom, that boom, that slides.
There are a number of pieces of wood. I think, I would like to give your viewers a little bit more credit here, and they can handle words that are slightly larger.
Oh, boy.
So, since you have taken out your pens,
and
you
your dictionary,
go to the dictionary and look up some sailing terminology.
Very good.
Like I was saying before we got highly derailed, I was on the Clearwater sloop, and that was the very first time that I had spent any overnights on any type of vessel, the first time I had really learned to sail. And there is something about the wind on your face and being on a wooden ship, having the deck beneath your feet. And, those sorts of things have been echoed by a number of people. So obviously the romanticism of being on a ship is something that captivates people.
And you decided to, once that happened to you, that bug bit you.
I had been bitten. I think there's some sort of elixir in its stinger or something like that.
Now tell me, how did you get into doing it for a living, as a profession? Did you then go to the big boats? Because I know that you're driving, you're piloting one of the largest boats, or is it the largest boat on the lake?
It is not. The biggest 1,000-footer.
That's a lot of boat.
A 1,000-footer is, as it would imply, 1,000 feet long. Some are slightly less, slightly more. So that's, because they're all close to 1,000 feet, they are referred to as 1,000-footers or just simply footers. And in fact, the Paul R. Tregurtha, I believe, is the largest, at least of the U.S. fleet. I'm not sure if it's the largest of the Canadian fleet as well, but the Stuart J. Court isn't quite as long.
Well, you're on a dedicated run, I understand. A dedicated run means that boat is dedicated to do one thing over and over, and you're something to do with pellets?
Iron ore pellets, or taconite pellets.
Say that again, please.
Taconite.
Taconite. What is taconite used for?
It's used for making different types of steel products that go into the car industry or other types of building materials.
Where's your usual run from to?
We load in Superior, Wisconsin, which is at the western end of Lake Superior. Then after loading, we go across Lake Superior, down the St. Mary's River, underneath the Mackinac Bridge, and down Lake Michigan to Burns Harbor, which is not too far away from Gary.
I see. Now, we want to change tracks for a second and focus in on women in the maritime industry. Quite frankly, I have not seen many women, whether they be deckhands, captains, or deck officers, working in the industry. What's happening with that, and what was the development of the captains that are females coming on board, and deckhands and so forth?
In my case, I didn't really give much thought to the fact that I would be the only or one of the few women on board a ship. It is certainly true that there aren't many of us, but those of us that do pursue such a career, I think, we definitely have a certain strength of character and, tolerance for coarse language.
Wait a minute.
Generally.
We have to, Rebecca, do a sidebar on this. There's a dream there of many women, not all women, but some women would say that's a dream, that you're the only woman or one of the few women. You're surrounded by all type of men.
I think
on a
you're
boat.
leading to something here.
Well,
I'm being baited into a certain quote that has become your favorite.
Okay, well, what is?
It is common that people will say, "Oh, you and all those men,"
Yeah,
and like it's exciting, and they just rip their shirts off all the time
Yeah.
and oil themselves up, and it's not quite like that, because though the odds are good, the goods are odd. Very odd. Sailors, including myself, are kind of a strange bunch, but they've become my surrogate family over the years, because if you really think about it, when I go out on the ship, I'm gone for about 2 months at a time, and then home for about a month. And if you consider, say, the wheelsmen that I work with, who the Storche Court is one of the few vessels, if not the only one left, that keeps their wheelsman, which is the person who actually steers the vessel. They stay in the pilot house pretty much all the time. Some of the other ships have started to, in good visibility during the day, allow their wheelsmen to do some simple tasks outside of the pilot house. But as far as this wheelsman goes that I stand my watches with, I probably spend a lot more time with him than even his wife does. So
Wow.
That's kind of a strange, reversal of circumstances.
I heard you mention before that some of the guys you work with feel like they're uncles, brothers, and so forth.
Brothers, definitely, from the standpoint that they tease you mercilessly. Not all of them. I mean, they generally know where the line is and how far they can push you, but pretty much if somebody completely ignores you, that's a good sign that they probably don't like you that
What
much.
if some of our viewers that are female at home right now wondering, what would I do? What would I have to do to get on a boat and actually work? What are the qualifications? Do I have to go to a special school, or could I just go down to Navy Pier and raise my hand and apply for a job?
There probably was a time you could have gone down to Navy Pier back in the day where there were like hundreds and hundreds of vessels on the Great Lakes. But at this point, what you would have to do is first obtain your Merchant Mariner's Credential. It used to be called an MMD, also a Z card. We don't have the cards anymore because the Coast Guard has kind of streamlined their way of credentialing people. And so basically all that would be involved would be to send in your money, of course, because we can't get anywhere without money. It's what makes the world go around. But once you have paid your user fees and sent in an application to the National Maritime Center down in West Virginia, the first thing that you will have is your Merchant Mariner's Credential, and you will be an OS, or an ordinary seaman. And at that point, you would be qualified to work in the position of a deckhand on a ship. You could also probably work as a second cook in the galley. You could do some sort of entry-level engine room position, depending on what your interests lie in, because, it isn't all deck-side and navigation. There are some women that are engineers as well, certainly.
I understand that engineering, especially on some of the cargo vessels, are some of the best-paid jobs that you can get.
That's true. I mean, especially if you end up on the ocean working in one of those jobs. I mean, I don't have exact figures, but I mean, you also have to be willing to be away from home for perhaps a longer period of time.
Now, working on passenger vessels, how is that different from working on the cargo vessels that you work on?
Well, I guess you can look at it this way. If you're on a passenger vessel, your cargo is people. But on a freighter, your cargo is iron ore pellets. Some ships carry grain, salt, coal, things like that. And instead of, being in the business of entertaining people, your thing that you have to make sure happens is that you safeguard your cargo. For instance, with coal, you have the possibility that you can have flammability issues, and so you have to make sure on a regular basis that, for instance, you go down and check and make sure that you don't have any high temperatures or, environments where a fire could be started.
I see.
So just because you're carrying something that doesn't talk back doesn't mean it's without its dangers.
Now, do you have to have any special education? In other words, could I get into this if I were just getting my high school equivalency? If I was getting a GED, would I qualify to get into this profession to work on passenger vessels or going on some of the cargo ships? What type of education would I have to have in order to just get my toe in the door?
Right. I think as long as you've graduated high school, you apply for your MMC, you start calling companies, and if they have an opening, then that'll be your opportunity. And probably the most important thing is that you're willing to do as you're told and work hard and not try to insist to the people that you're working with that you know exactly what to do and you don't need their help. But you just have to go out there with a good work ethic. And really anybody that is interested in making their career on the water, it is absolutely possible. Those jobs are out there for you for the taking.
How did you get inspired by a mentor? I mean, you're not the first female to do this, but there must be. You must be the first female to get into this and be inspired by a mentor of some type. Do you have some older women that have kind of coached you along?
Honestly, that's an interesting question, and thinking about that, it wasn't really until after I really got involved in the maritime industry and got my license and started working that I began to become acquainted with some of the other women that were in the industry. Yesterday, we were doing a little radio spot with Tamala Odom. Some of you may know her, maybe. And with Camilla Ross, who is a local to Chicago and is certainly an inspiration from where she came from. I mean, she's at the point now where she's lived through the times where women could only have one of three jobs: a nurse, a teacher, and what was the other one? A secretary, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay.
And
yeah.
That's something that I have never experienced. A housewife, of course. You can always rear the chillins, right?
Right.
But, coming out of high school, going to college, that was nothing like what I experienced. I mean, there really was, no notion of, well, you can't do that because you're a woman. And if I had to pick someone, I would say that there's a woman named Sarah Boucher that I worked with on the Bay Lady, which is a schooner. And if you remember about schooners, they have at least two mainsails. So that one did have two mainsails, plus some others. And we worked together in Bar Harbor, as I said, on the Bay Lady. And there were actually days when she and I and another woman named Stacy were the entire crew of the ship. It only took 3 people to sail because it was pretty simplistic with the way that all the lines and such were put together. So you really needed only those 3 people. And it was really interesting to watch all of the passengers come aboard, and they would see these 3 gals that were going to be taking them out sailing.
Amazing.
And especially, surprisingly, some of the women would just kind of look around and go, okay, where's the captain?
Right.
And that was, just something that you sort of smiled and said, she's right there, and went on about your job. But it's something that certainly people are, even in this day and age. I mean, this was like the mid to late 90s, and people were still kind of surprised by that. So I can't say that, ending up going to the Maritime Academy, that I had anyone specifically that was a mentor until a little bit later on, meeting some of the other women. But, we're pretty scattered around the lakes, probably even around the world. And so it's not until you do things like we're doing now, or, being a member of the Shipmasters Association, just, increasing your network of people that that could potentially introduce you to other women in the industry, you know, you kind of feel like an island to a certain point.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, my name is Mark Stevenson, and we are with Rebecca Hancock. She is the Grand President of the International Shipmasters Association, and the Shipmasters Association represents all of the captains and people that work in the maritime industry and all of the Great Lakes in Canada and its tributaries as well. Rebecca, I want to go back to this grand opportunity that you have as Grand President.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit about your administration this year. What are the things that you would like to see have done differently than has been done in the past?
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in, concerned with, is not only educating myself about the different things that can affect me and my job, you know, pieces of legislation, any other laws that might go into effect that could, you know, have an impact on my daily life and my career, but also to take those pieces of information and make them easy for other people to find out about, to learn themselves. We have a website, which the address to the website, am I allowed to say it?
You can say that website.
It's shipmaster.org.
Shipmaster.org.
So if you go to that website, you can learn a little bit more about the ISMA. And we're really trying at this point, especially through the website, to try to get a lot of information up on it, you know, different accomplishments that the organization has had throughout history, and as you know, people are members that have and are ending up in the news, and also to try to post information about these types of legislation.
Like the scholarships, for example. We were at an event earlier today, and the shipmasters gave out 4 $500 scholarships. And on the Grand Lodge level, the scholarships are much more, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we generally give out anywhere from $500 to $1,000, depending on, you know, what's in our budget, what's available. The scholarship is something that is a really important tool because, in fact, I was one of the recipients of the ISMA scholarship, back in the early part of the 2000s.
See what that did? We only have about 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you are telling some of the people out here about your struggles and so forth, but especially how they can get into this field from scratch. And in particular, the ladies that are out there that don't have much of a choice, because there's not a lot of jobs out here in some communities. And I'd like to know what are the things that they need to do in order to get themselves able to walk through the door.
Well, like I said before, just by getting your Merchant Mariner's credential and by going on the Coast Guard website or Homeport, I think it is, homeport.com perhaps.
Well, wait, we can lead you to all of these things that she said, including the Grand Lodge website, but you'll see it right on the bottom of the screen here, chicagoshipmasters.com, chicagoshipmasters.com. There's a tab that will bring you straight to the Grand Lodge that says Grand Lodge right on that website. And yeah, I can say the website, this is a not-for-profit
Right.
organization. We make sure that we're the mission being the respected voice of the professional mariner to legislative and regulatory agencies. I know that the things that you're going to do this year are just superb. The bridge that you have, tell us a little bit about the bridge in the last couple of minutes that we have and the people that you have around you.
Well, I have some good officers helping me. In fact, a couple of women, Amy Seeley.
The first time that we have 3 women. Amy
Christine
Seeley, yes.
Tilke, and though you may not be a woman, you're still a special person.
Well, thank you.
And Mark Stevenson is our Grand Chaplain, so we appreciate his work as well. Any of you, if you're looking to work on a ship, it is not out of your reach. You can get your Merchant Mariner's credential simply by filling out some applications and paying your fees. You'll also have to get a TWIC card, which is the Transportation Workers Identification Credential. You'll have to have a physical, a drug test, you know, that sort of thing. You can also go to one of the 6 maritime academies that are scattered throughout the country. Like me, you could attend the Great Lakes Maritime Academy, which is in Traverse City, Michigan. And also there is a school in Chicago that you have the option of attending. It's a 2-month program, I believe, and certainly there is more information about that school.
Check
if
the website.
You care to check the website. I can point at it too, I think.
Good.
Pretty cool. You see my stripes? They're very nice.
Right.
Right. Merciless plug.
Yes.
And just, you know, if you don't know how to go and which direction you should head, then you just see if you can find Captain Mark Stevenson, and don't give up. If you're really interested in this career,
never give
you
up.
just keep going until you get what you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to and learning from Rebecca Hancock, our Grand President of the International Shipmasters. My name is Mark Stevenson. Yes, Captain Mark Stevenson, and you've been watching another episode of From the Wheelhouse. Until next week, see you then.